in 3, in 2, in 1. Welcome, everybody. We were already engaged in deep discussion, so here we are. We had to stop ourselves to get started again, but welcome to FrameCast number 52. Here for the very first time, not with Xeno, but with Xandy. What is up, Xandy? How's it going?
I'm pretty glad to be here. That's what's going on. I have about half a dozen cups of tea. They're all in different glasses, so don't worry. From last time when I had that weird glass, I've got half a dozen more glasses. I'm ready to talk about Warframe right before a gigantic update for Warframe, and probably get massively off topic like last time, where we talked 2 hours about what even. Catch everybody up. Where are we?
I mean, like last time we did a podcast on like the main channel or whatever. Like I don't even post on there, but it's like I call it the main channel because this is the gaming channel that goes on. But last time we didn't talk about any gaming, and we were supposed to also have a Warframe style podcast. Like we wanted to follow it up, and now Xeno's gone, and right now like Steve is live, like the Warframe developer that often streams before the new update goes live. So yeah, like we're pretty much set and ready for that thing to drop. So I figured what better time to like pick up that promise than to do the FrameCast with Xandy right now, talking about Warframe stuff and maybe like other channels as well. Also, like this is one take on your YouTuber bingo card, me asking, hey, how's it going? Even though we've been talking for like 15 minutes and everyone knows we've been talking for 15 minutes.
Right. The content of the discussion, everyone is clear that this is not the beginning of the discussion. It's been going. This is how you do a good podcast, though. Like you just talk for like an hour. We talked about this last time before we started. You just talk for like an hour, and then when it occurs to you that it's a waste not to have hit the record button, you hit the record button. Like that's how you do it. Well, that's not the only way you can do it, but that's how we're gonna do it.
I've actually like seriously had podcasts where like I forgot to hit the record button to read the entire podcast, and I like had to do it again because like I just forgot it. It's like, oh shit, okay, here we have to go again. 2 hours. Whatever we're gonna talk about now. But yeah, like I love it when like you start a podcast already from the start, because then like if like you know it's gonna flow organically, which it does right now. So let's get into like one of the things that we were talking about before. I don't think we should get into like the weird and quirky YouTubers, but let's get into one weird and quirky YouTube video. Which you made on your second channel recently, which is also very much concerning Warframe. Oh boy, someone asked you the forbidden question. What is your favorite Warframe?
Did he just say the F word on the
I say
forbidden word? The F word.
Favorite.
Oh. Right, you know, I have to wash out my mouth. Let me just get a. Oh, yeah, Michelle, disgusting, absolutely disgusting. Saying the F word. In my presence, you know who you're talking to?
I can make it better. I can call the B word. What's the best Warframe of all time?
Oh, my appendix.
What's the meta best Warframe that I should play? Can I copy your build entirely?
The M word. The M word. Meta game.
The meta.
Disgusting. Yeah, since you have dared in your great arrogance to ask me, of all people, this forbidden question, using the trifecta of forbidden words, the M word, even the B word, I will answer your question. But you do not know what you're getting yourself into, Michelle.
Well,
no.
let's first expand it a little bit for people that miss a bit of context. So, like, obviously, any content creator that plays a game, or like a game where you can choose characters, or like anything where there's like options and they refute that, like they're gonna get asked a question like, "What's your favorite this? What's your favorite that?" Now, for you, we may have already noticed that's a bit of a problem. So like, what is the big issue when it comes to people asking you about what's the best, what's the favorite, what's the meta, what's the only thing that I should pay attention to because it's like the best according to you? What's the problem with people asking that question, and why should it actually not be asked?
I'm not gonna go on about this. I'm gonna keep it short and sweet, I promise you. However, I could easily go on about it. I think there are three main things. Most of them apply to other people, but one of them applies to me. So the first two things are The first one is you don't want to discourage people from using things that they would like. Warframe is not a game where you need to use like any set thing, really. There are certainly some very specific niches where you want one thing or another, but generally speaking, there's no problem with just using what you like. And it would be a shame to give people the idea that you can't use what you like. This is how people get in a mindset where they don't play the game for fun, which is bad. It's bad for your community, and it's bad for them playing the game because they're not going to have as much fun. That's a problem for everyone. The second problem is that when you ask any creator what their favorite anything is in any context, what you're kind of doing is causing the creator to like need to die on the hill of that thing. Like they have no choice but to declare a thing, and then people use that information more than you'd want them to. It's like if you hold me at gunpoint and say, name one Warframe that you like appreciably the most in some way. Obviously, I could do it. Like clearly, like if I had to, I can just pick a name. You know, I could just say Hydroid, and it's like, I did it. It felt terrible. Let me tell you. I honestly, my stomach is turning right now, but I did it. Hydroid is not in any meaningful way, if you look inside of my head, my favorite, because I do not have a favorite. But I do think it's accurate if you watch my content to say I like Hydroid a lot. If you then listened to me say that and got me like a Hydroid figure instead of a Valkyr figure or whatever, picking a frame I don't love so much, that would not be like irrelevant to me, you know? It's not like I would hate it or something. But I do feel like forcing the person to declare a single thing, like when you put them on the spot, it can feel a little bit challenging. And it also gives you less information. The most common reason people ask this question is as an icebreaker. And it's better if I can just give you more information. Like I'll just tell you a few that I like. And then you only know more than you would have if I'd given you one answer. Finally, and this is the kicker for me. My whole career is making builds and loadouts for every single Warframe. So I obviously don't have a favorite. Like, if you have ever watched my channel, have you ever seen a video that was like the best or the most or my favorite or whatever? Literally every video is like talking about everything in that, like all the barrow items, all the weapons, all the whatever. Or it's part of a series that includes everything. So it's like a Nezhev build video, but it's in a list of a ton of build videos, you know? You would never think that I would have a favorite. Like you could tell just by looking at my channel, like I do not have a favorite. Of course I don't. So that's why. So I was asked, can I give them the context about where this series came from now?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I a big way that I'm supported is by my patrons on Patreon at the $9 tier who get Parlay, which is basically a Q&A video I make for them on my second channel. And one of the things that you could ask would be, you know, a question you know I don't like. You can ask whatever you want. I just do my best to answer it. You might not get an answer you love, but I'll answer in my own unique way. And somebody dared, just like you, in your great arrogance, to ask me what my favorite Warframe is. And they said, okay, but I know how you're going to weasel out of this. You have to answer just one. You can't pick multiple. You need to say one single frame in one video, whatever. But they were not careful enough. They did not pay their lawyer enough dollary dues, because there is a way out of that. And it's to make multiple videos. So I did. And I began a series where I talk for a few minutes off the cuff about why every single frame in alphabetical order is the best frame and my favorite frame, which of course none of them are in any appreciable way. It's meant to be a sort of soft parody. You can see it now. Look at that. Yeah. Complete with alphabetized ordering. The videos link to each other. And each video, the signature thing is that at the end I say, now after I said all of these awesome things about this Warframe, you must be thinking this is my favorite Warframe. Isn't that right? And just as I say that, the end card that YouTube lets you put in pops up and it shows the next video in the series. Like, no, it's totally not. Like, this is a complete meme. Like, I hope you know it's not actually my favorite thing. Yeah. And the comments have been an absolute joyride. Like there's every video, someone's like, "But this isn't the best." What? It's like, yes, no. Watch the
Obviously
video.
not. Like
Obviously not.
that's a funny thing. Like a couple of things while you were talking about that just popped into my head, which are so incredibly funny. Is like the thing you say when like someone tries to hold you at gunpoint and be like what is your favorite Warframe? Like no matter what you're gonna answer, is they're just gonna say like, oh, so you're a filthy whatever you just said main.
Right.
Like that's gonna be their response right at the gate, unless it's their favorite Warframe too, and they're just gonna be like, "Oh, really? Don't you think that all these other Warframes are trash too?" And it's so
Right,
one-dimensional because it's like, okay, so your entire personality now comes down to like, "Hey, I played as one character, and the rest are all trash." But also,
Well, like, go ahead.
But also, like the other thing that pops into my head is like what you said with like an icebreaker. It's like yes, it's a question that someone can pose as like an icebreaker. So like they might come into the chat into the stream that the very first time they enter your stream, they're like, oh boy, this is like Xandy. Like I've seen a couple of videos of him or I saw him appear on some random podcast. I want to like talk to him. And they're like, what can I ask? I'm not really like all that comfortable asking questions, but let me just ask what his favorite Warframe is. And you're just like, oh my god, you just dared to ask me that. And then they're just completely turned off.
Oh,
they're just like, oh no, what did I do wrong?
That's why. So a lot of people might be asking, like, why don't you just tell people not to ask that? But it's like it's a necessary part of the experience of streaming. Like, there's nothing you can do. Like it has to be there. And if you just explode at people, and it doesn't really make me mad. Like it's funny at this point.
It is.
But indeed, it is a complicated thing to answer. You know, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like I respect you more than that. Like I don't really, you know. And so of course I made that series as a way to answer. You know, if you really want a proper answer, do you have a minute? Like you can. That series is probably like those videos average like 3 minutes, and there's like 40 some Warframes. So it's probably like 3 hours long, 2 or 3 hours long.
And you're only halfway there. Like you're only at core or something. But like I mean, like I know you're not lying because I'm the same way. Like I've always like looked at other creators that have their favorite Warframe and kind of like a bit of jealousy because they could like make their brand surrounding that Warframe, and I'd be like, yeah, but like you know I kind of like the Excalibur Warframe because I started out with that, but like I don't really use him for like his abilities because I don't really care. Like I never really play him. I kind of like Chrome and Oberon to like run around with, but like also not really because like I'll also love like Loki for his invisibility. It's like all these different things have like different use cases. So like I never really have a favorite. So I was just like, yeah, like I can never answer that question. I was like, yeah, there's a bunch that I like, and like I mean, like if you want to like pay me in some way with like, oh, what kind of Warframes do you think about? Probably Excalibur, Oberon, Chroma, or something. But like neither of these three is my favorite. But with that series, like I actually think that we could actually like do a step up. Because you know that some people also ask like what's your favorite Warframe to like relate to you, you know, like they want to see if you're relatable because like I love Excalibur, you love Excalibur, I'm gonna watch this person sort of thing, right? So recently Jack's Films made this make your own apology video, which was basically like what you did, but then he made one video where it's like, okay, so we're gonna do like a make your own apology video, so I'm gonna give you two scenarios, like either it's gonna be like you made a TikTok at a funeral, or you caused COVID or something. You're gonna choose what is your apology. What did you do? And then you choose what you then did. And then he's like, okay, are you gonna are you gonna cry or are you not gonna cry? Are you really sorry or are you not sorry? Are you gonna like be in a fancy place or are you not gonna be in a fancy place? Are you gonna hold a puppy or are you not gonna hold a puppy? And then like basically your options, like you go down and he has like 36 or whatever different options, different videos made where like in all this different forms where he's like crying or whatever or not, like whatever you chose. I was like, what if you like based on like personality, you'd be like the very first video that someone finds in your channel is like, okay, do you want to know my favorite Warframe? Well, what kind of person are you? What kind of gameplay do you like? And they just click on that and they're like, yes, you're right. My favorite Warframe is indeed Loki. I, like you, also love to be invisible. I'm like, oh my god, I love this guy. And then it's literally like all videos are just like, yes, indeed, I love Right Up. Right is my favorite Warframe. I love it. And you just get everyone on your side.
You're onto something there, because I was thinking about that, and it's like I don't think that would be that hard to. I mean, it wouldn't be a piece of cake. It would take some work, but like That's doable. And I mean, you're exactly right with what you were saying before. It's like people have this reaction where it's like they ask what your favorite Warframe is, and then you say, "Oh, I'm Hydroid," and they're like, "Oh, so you're literally Hydroid,"
Yeah.
and I'm like, "That's just the frame that I like," and they're like, "No, you're tentacle porn," and it's like, "No, I just enjoy the game," and they're like, "You like tentacle porn," and I'm like, "No, like, stop." Like, it's just the game. But no, you know what? Forget it. We should have given up long ago. That's the real approach. Yes, that is exactly what I like. I do like tentacle porn. There you go. Tentacle porn, Xandy Pants 2020.
I mean, like with Hydra, you're gonna have like a final option tree where it's like, do you like tentacle porn? Yes or no? And you're gonna have one video where like, yes, just like you. I'm not afraid to admit that I love tentacle porn. And then like the other video is like, yes, just like you, I really hate this association with tentacle porn. Like, what the fuck? No, we was into that shit. But I do love Hydra, just like you. I am quite afraid of this podcast. I am quite afraid that this podcast will get clipped at the time when I say, yes, I do like tentacle porn. Oh boy, I do not want to see that out of context.
We gotta embrace the quote. Now, what is Xandy's most used frame? Do you really want to know?
I'm quite curious.
Would it make you happy to know, really? Blue Demon in chat says, what is Xandy's most used frame? Will you really feel better if I tell you? Are you sure you want to go down this road? Did you not listen to what I just told you about the person who had the audacity to ask me which Warframe was the best, my favorite? Are you really ready to play with fire like this, Blue Demon? Let's go. Let's the gloves are off. The wrist braces are off. Let me just get a few more cups of tea. Just,
actually,
double fist some turmeric tea.
Actually, like was something along the lines of like what you did. I had like 2 years ago, like when like these top 10 lists of like top 10 best Warframes. Like I think like 2018. It was 2018, and like it was like a month into 2018, no content had been released yet, and people were already making like top 10 best Warframes of 2018 videos. It's like, well, what the fuck? What are you talking about? Nothing has been released yet. It was so dumb. So then like I think I made some sort of video where it's like the top 10 best Warframes of 2019. Like, I mean, we can't be too early, you know? And I did that in 2018. I don't even know what I did. It was like, like PewDiePie joined as a Warframe, and like they merged two Warframes. Like, it was just a complete like dumb stupid video. But it's like all these things which like top 10 best Warframes, like you can't really rank things like all that well, I believe, because it's like it's really dependent on your use case. Of course, like some things are like, I do think that we do have to put an asterisk that it's like some things are easier to uptake by like mainstream players. So like if you get into something, like yes, there like you can make things better for different use cases with like a lot of synergies in the background. That's a lot of things that you do. But I think that like most commonly used frames, or like most generally seen frames as like best frames, tend to be like seen as best frames because like in the playstyle, like for most players, they're easier to pick up, and then they give a certain feeling of power that they didn't have with these other frames. Like, okay, yeah, well, this seems likely. So I do think that there's something to certain frames or certain options with anything, because like it's easy to uptake for a lot of people, but that doesn't mean it's like the best by all.
Yeah, I think the big thing, that was a great way to describe it. I feel like the big thing is that the reason to want to ask this question, like now we can get into like, but why are you asking? And we talked before about how some people ask that kind of question. Some people want to know like your favorite or the best Warframe or whatever, because they want an icebreaker. But another common reason that people ask, I know because I ask them why they're asking, and they say this, is that they want a recommendation for something that's really good. And I kind of get that. Like some people are not really willing to think creatively and say, okay, there are many different things in the game, and so there's not going to be one best thing. But on the other hand, I completely relate to the desire to play a mission and make an educated choice. It's fun to bring something that has utility that you can use. Now, in the same way that people say Warframe is a power fantasy game, which of course it is, there are different kinds of power fantasy games, and Warframe is sort of like a godlike power fantasy game, whereas something like Destiny is what I call a David and Goliath power fantasy game. It's whether you beat impossible odds or whether you are the impossible odds for the enemies.
Mhm.
And when you're in a godlike power kind of power fantasy game, you have this situation where you want to exercise that power. And so picking abilities that you don't need, but that would be good in a situation is fulfilling that power fantasy. Like that's what that is. And so it makes perfect sense to want that. And I think the trouble is that, like, again, if you really push me, I could probably give you like there's no single best Warframe, but what if we limit it to only capture missions or only exterminate missions, only defense missions, only eidolons with a certain role, stuff like that. Then it gets more answerable,
So it's like what's your favorite Warframe on like a Friday afternoon when it's just a little bit cloudy outside and you've had like a couple of drinks and you're doing an eidolon, but you're doing it like halfway through the time, but you still want to do a triathlon, but you're not quite sure because you might have to like pick up the door, so you're kind of doing it solo, but someone asks you whether they can join and they might bring a friend or they might not bring a friend. In that case, what is your favorite Warframe?
Favorite Warframe? Like, I would just as soon log out of the game. Thank you for asking. All right. By the way, to go back to the so chat, would you like to guess what my favorite Warframe by the statistics is? Now you only have 15 seconds to answer because some of you might be able to quickly inspect me in game fast enough otherwise. So go ahead. You can name Warframes, and then you have to guess what percentage it is. Michelle, you want to guess?
I know the percentage is gonna be very, very screwed because like it's like I've had like Excalibur on there with like 50% for the longest time, even though I haven't played him in years. But that's just because like the early game counted a lot. I would say like
we got a Saren, we got a Wukong.
Ooh,
Naros.
Under 8%.
That's what you think for the percentage is under 8%.
Yeah, because I think you switch a lot.
So the correct frame is Saren.
Ooh.
Is the correct frame. And NVIDIA said, my guess is one of the starter frames with 10 or 20%. Okay. So it's Saren Prime. And now you're going to guess the percentage. So go ahead and guess the percentage. So again, Saren Prime is my most used Warframe. What percent of the time, like 10%, 20%, 30%, 5%, 50%, I see 8%. Michelle said below 8%, 6%. Okay. Remember, some people could be cheating and looking at my profile, but that's okay. There's nothing we can do.
By the way, I like the 15 seconds you gave, even if it was like you said before, like looking things up. I mean, 15 seconds is also quite realistic because once someone asks you that question on Twitch, it's like they have 15 seconds. Like you have 15 seconds of their attention. If you don't answer it in 15 seconds, they're gonna be like, okay,
yes,
bye.
Correct.
So
you're just gonna forget it. Yeah. Absolutely correct. You all thought it was so people wouldn't check. That's what I said.
Yeah, but
no, it's also just pointless unless we give it a time limit.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. We got 8%, 6%, 12%, 10%, 12%, 4%. And we got 10 to 20% from NVIDIA before.
I would love for someone to just like come in with like a 69%. Like actually, like that would be great, dude. Honestly, so like I don't know what I can do, but whatever you want, within my capacity, I will give to you. If you're just gonna turn around and say like, okay, so it's Saren Prime at like 69% because all of my other frames I play on like my second account. So like this is the only account on which I've ever played Saren Prime, and like I've only mained Saren on this account.
It's not 69%, but it could be 6.9%.
Woo!
It's not, but we're close.
4.20.
6.2.
Oh, damn.
Yep, it's pretty low. That please one time was right. Almost 6%. You said below 8%, which is pretty good. Arthur said 4%, which is admirable. I think Pixel entering 8%, also admirable. Yep, it's 6.2%. I just honestly play them all that much. Like that is how even it is. They're all between like 6 and 2%, basically, and then it just adds up.
Yeah, well, I mean that like when it comes down to like reviewing things in general, like when it's your job to like go over things and like grade them, but not grade them, but like review them, like present them to people, with like whether it's like in tutorial style, whether it's in like a review style, like you got to take everything evenly, and you can have preferences. One thing that I was wondering about, but like we should probably at some point also maybe like talk about Heart of Deimos coming out soon, many different things. But like one thing that I was wondering about is like yes, the people asking for a favorite frame could be like a way to like engage in that power fantasy. Like, oh, I just want to like get strong quickly. But like I can also imagine it being like a step into something to familiarize themselves with like the mechanics behind it. So like when I was like new to, when I was new to Warframe, I would often like go and copy like builds from reviews because I didn't understand the mod system and I didn't understand what they did, even if they told me. But then if I put it in myself and like I played it with a little bit, because I was like playing it, because I was working with it, I could like slowly but surely understand. And it's like also the same way with when it comes to like tech videos or something. Like the first piece of tech that you choose, you don't know anything about it, so you're just gonna go with like whatever the YouTuber says is best. And then like for using it and then for trial and error, like you start to understand, okay, so this is not like the best thing, and like there's not really a best thing, and now then you can understand the use case. But in order to like get to that level of understanding, like the best way is not to just like sit and listen, but also like try it in practice. And the way to try it in practice is to like go by what someone says is best, and then like see for yourself like where it falls short.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that the trick for this whole idea of like you don't want people to just pick one thing and not think about the choice because maybe they want to do that, but they probably would have fun if they tried lots of things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the danger is mostly finding a way to get the person to, like you said, have some place to start, but not giving them one place to start. Like you need to give them something to use. And I also think a really good example of the modding system being teachable is that people learn quickly when you show them, like, use these mods and you will feel that it is powerful, and then you'll get why it's good. It might seem like it makes more sense to use shields or whatever, but if you do this, you'll see like this is powerful and this is why, and then hopefully you can adapt it to something you enjoy more. And I think that is the better approach most of the time. Indeed, I mean, I don't shy away from giving people build examples, for example. Something I've started doing a lot more is putting the build right at the beginning of the video. So if people want to copy it and leave, they like, fine. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna change your mind by forcing you to watch the whole video. You're just gonna get annoyed, you know, or you'll skip to the end and find it anyway. So I'll just give it to you. You could go try it. And if you hate it, the danger is that sometimes you make a build that does something specific and people didn't listen to the video. So they say, oh, this build's bad, but they didn't do the thing that the build was supposed to be good for with it, which, like, there's not much you can do. You know, the best thing you can do is just suggest fun things. Or another thing that I'm going to be doing in the future is like front load the simple builds. If there's a build that's easier to play or less complicated, just put that at the front. Yeah. And then people, if they copy it, they'll use that one. It'll be fine. And then put all the weird stuff later on, which, like, there's plenty of that. Especially in Heart of Deimos, there'll be plenty of that.
Yeah, speaking of Heart of Deimos, one quick comment on like the throwing build at the start of the video. Like, it's so funny whenever I would go to build videos, like there would always be the top photos comment would just be like timestamp for like the build. Someone would just like time like, oh guys, the build is at like this. That would be the top photo comment. But regardless, Heart of Deimos, it's coming up today at some point. Steve just went offline, so it might be launching at any point in time.
Oh, baby.
How do you feel about like Heart of Deimos? I think that we should like start with the beginning thing. I think what's most important about Heart of Deimos before any of its content is the way that like it was announced without any previous leaks about it. Normally, like we'd know about things that be coming out at TennoCon, the big announcement reveals for Warframe, and then like it was also announced in a state that was like it's gonna be out within a month, compared to Fortuna, which took like almost 2 years to come out. Like, how do you feel about like this upcoming release of the Heart of Deimos, regardless of the content, just like what is coming up?
Yeah, so you're talking about basically the way it was released.
Yeah, the way it was handled, and like the way we're seeing this come out. Also on all platforms too.
Yeah, although on the Switch, I think it's later this week, but it's still coming out this week, which is pretty good. And then it's on PC, PS4, and Xbox One today, ideally. It's not out yet, but it
No.
probably will be. Yeah, I mean, I think you're exactly right to say the difference is that it led up to this release with no fanfare. Like it just kind of came out of nowhere. Pixel and I in chat, I see, we're talking about this on my stream yesterday, where they kind of went back to this old school way of doing updates, where some gigantic thing that we heretofore knew absolutely nothing about just came out of nowhere, and then it's coming and it arrives. Which I think feels really good. I think that plays the strengths of Digital Extreme as a developer, because they stream constantly. So it makes sense to have it be like we could just spring something on you and then we follow along with it. And the hype will last like an interval that makes sense. People after that, the Tenno Live this year, the view counts on Twitch in the Warframe directory were way higher, and they remained high for quite a long time. They're just now tapering off a little bit. Like this past week is where I felt not low, but just like not higher. And now the update's coming out. So I feel like it was pretty good timing overall. Maybe a week shorter, but that's arguable. I feel like it was just a good reveal. It was a good way to do it. It was the way they were doing it before, and I thought it worked pretty well. Like, I'm happy that they went back to it. I also want to quickly add that I think the Corpus remaster and the Deadlock Protocol update were kind of similar. Like, there were a lot of things in that update that there wasn't a lot of fanfare before they came out. They talked about it a little. We knew it was coming, but not like a ton. So they were kind of edging in that direction. And the quest was a lot of surprises. I hope you enjoyed it anyway. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, I like one thing which I just really really like about this update, regardless of the content, is just like the feel it gives, because I felt that especially like Plains of Eidolon hit it very right. When like that was announced and that came out like in October, like that was way longer than this, but still like that reveal of like a brand new system and then coming out like right then, like that worked. But then they barely got out the sacrifice in time before like the next TennoCon. And then it kind of started on this road where like things were announced before like the things that they announced before were out, and at that point like announcements become weird, and like that didn't sit right by me, because it's like it doesn't work for if you're announcing something and like the previous thing hasn't been released yet. It's like, okay, so like when is this gonna happen? So like actually like having a date and like coming up very fast, like that works really well. So like that makes me ready for like rather confident. Also that it comes out in the console at the same time. That's interesting too. That's never been done before. And most of the time like console builds need to be more stable, because on console you can't really fix things as fast on PC. So I'm really curious as to like how the stability is going to be. But I think it's
I think of that. Yeah, that is a pretty major thing. You're right. The stability, because oftentimes PC is talked about as being like the beta version where everything breaks, it comes out on console and it's stable. But now that won't happen.
No.
Huh.
And like I remember there were two absolutely disruptive updates. One was like the what was the name again? The one that came out at like the first TennoCon on that TennoCon. That was like the when the void system got changed and stuff. And it was, that was like Lonero. You had the other one, and that was going to be the new. No, the War Within. Like, what was the one in between? Spectre of the Rail. That was it. So, like, there was an update that came out on the day of TennoCon, when like most of the creators were on TennoCon. A new update came out that completely revolutionized the entire game. New solar map, new things, new like void system, and it just everything was broken. The entire game was broken. That was the first time, but like the second time was I think with Sanctuary Onslaught. That like really messed up the game, and like as far as I was able to like hear for inside channels was that like that thing worked perfectly on like QA test servers, like dev servers, and then just didn't work on public servers. So I'm really curious, but still like this level of confidence, like compared to like a Railjack release of something that was like announced like years ago and then came out like feeling like in a rushed state. Having this thing where it's like we've kept quiet about this until like a month before, and you're getting everything we've shown, and we're releasing it on console at the same time because we're confident about it. That feels good. That feels really good.
Another kind of related thing I want to mention is there are major chunks of this update that we still know nothing about. So like the new player experience is in this update.
Oh yeah.
But like, we have literally no idea what it is. Like, it could be literally anything. Like, we we saw a cinematic. That's it. Like, it could be basically anything. I have a friend of mine who helped me brand the channel, and my mom as well. I convinced both of them to start playing Warframe to try the new player experience for the first time. So they're going to load it up and start in a couple of days. And I'm probably going to replay it as well. I'll probably make a new account. I know they added a thing where you're going to be able to click a thing in your quest log and replay it if you want to re-experience it. But I think I would like to see how the beginning of the game feels again too. And they've told like it could be anything. Like I have so many questions. Like if you've seen the trailer, there's something that comes later in the game that they showed at the very beginning of the game now. So like, is that changing? Like it could be a lot of things, or it could be very similar.
I'm really curious. That being said, I haven't seen the trailer recently, so like it's not like I'm gonna be able to like really know every detail of it. But like generally, like if I think I know what you're talking about, what kind of spoiler or reveal? Like I do feel that at a certain point, like that reveal was years ago, and it's like the fact it's still being kept hush hush. It's like on the one hand, like I appreciate it because it was a really nice reveal, but like I kind of also feel that reveal should get should deflate in value over time, because like there should be better reveals or better things coming up later on. So like at a certain point, like you should be able to talk about it. One thing that I was actually like thinking about, which could be like a really fun idea, but let's hope no one steals it. But like one really cool video to make is like let's say that like you and I both get a friend that has never played Warframe, and then like we get like both 10 minutes to like fill them in with like information about Warframe. Okay, so like you talk to them and you try to explain Warframe to them without them seeing the game or whatever, and then they both sit next to each other, and then they gotta like start Warframe at the exact same time. Like the first person to like get to a certain point and like understand the systems like wins. But once they start playing, we can't say a thing. So like you gotta explain them things before they, and then see if they can like understand it for like this new player experience.
Yeah, like we're basically competing. It's kind of like witness sketching or like eyewitness sketch artists. Here you have to try to describe it well enough, and then you compete to do the thing. That could be interesting. I feel like I don't know how to make it fair with who we pick as a subject though. We could do, what we could do is if we could find a lot of people, that could even it out. So we find like a sample size of like 20 or like all of our audience brings a friend to the stream. That they all their friends listen to us describe the thing, and then they all start, and then like we keep times with like when they finish. That seems borderline doable, actually.
Well, it's just like a fun company. Is like how like what knowledge do you have about the game? How much do you have? And like how well can you tell it to someone that doesn't know anything about it without them seeing what it is? So like you got to describe it beforehand. And then how good is a new player experience in like introducing these systems? So like you can do really well by like telling them very well like how mod synergies work. But like if the game doesn't do a great job explaining the mod system, like you don't know, like telling them about mod synergy is like, well, good fucking job, man. Like how is that going to work? But if the game does do a good job, then you have that extra benefit. Like that would have like that's something I was thinking about, like when you were saying like your mom, like you have your mom and your friend has never played Warframe, like starting to play Warframe like with his new play experience. Like that's so like that's kind of cool to just like see like how people that are completely unfamiliar and take up this new information, and like how well that works, because like I said, like always like new player things or like it's made by people that know exactly how the thing works. It's and then like how well can they convey that information, because there's so much like implicit knowledge that we have, so many things that are just like familiar to us that we don't even know how to like explain.
Another problem is chat has pointed out that we're making an assumption there regarding us having friends. We'll have to get enough audience members that have friends to do this experiment. But yeah, I agree that an interesting point is where it's like if you explain systems well that you don't remember are not relevant early on, like I would dare say that even talking about mods is probably kind of a mistake early on, because very early on, because you don't even have the endo and credits. You know what I mean? And you'll get some endo, but you're gonna spend the credits on weapons, which you
Yeah.
probably should. That's reasonable.
Yeah.
So
Well.
that's
Yeah.
complicated.
Yeah. Like I mean, it depends on like how you want to do it. Like if you want to do it in like some sort of like manageable video size format, like you'd probably like see if you could do it in some way that like maybe like the goal would be to like get a certain amount of damage or like get to a certain point, and maybe you'd like have these accounts like already be gifted with like a certain amount of endo or whatever so they can get started. Like, but I mean, you can set it up, but like that was just a fun idea. Getting back to Heart of Deimos. One of the things which I think is rather interesting. I mean, like I haven't been keeping full track of it, but one of the things which I have like, which really piqued my interest in a good and maybe also not so good way was the new like ability thing system. Like a lot of people have been like already upset about it or like happy about it or whatever. Like, how do you feel like the thing is like? Is it going to be big? Do you think it's going to be big? Do you think it's going to be small? Do you think it's going to be important or not? Like, how do you
Yes.
feel about it?
The much vaunted Helminth system.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, the space woogity woogity in the back of our ship that eats
yeah.
our warframes and injects them with powers.
Mm-hmm.
Glorious. I do think that it is a. It's kind of a lot of ways to answer that question. Like whether people will perceive it as being an important system, I think maybe they won't. I don't know. I think that there are some powers in the system that feel a little they aren't actually like the only good choice, but they will easily look to a lot of players like, why would you pick something other than, if you can pick this, why would you pick something else, you know? I don't think that's actually a balancing problem, but balance is not only about what is actually true, it's also about what people think is true. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a concern I have. um, Overall, I feel pretty good about it. I think most of the things they chose, most, not all, there's plenty of exceptions, are sensible things to share. They're things that don't seem way too powerful. People will probably consider a few options, but not too many. But then the people will popularize some more specific options. Then over time, maybe it will become popular to have some diversity. But I think it's a cool idea. I feel like it depends a lot on something I see someone saying in chat, which is basically it depends how much they buff abilities in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they start buffing a lot of abilities, I know a lot of people have this thing where with augment mods, people say they want an augment mod slot, but that doesn't make sense. There's supposed to be a trade-off. If it
Yeah.
feels like you have limited mod space, that's how you get non-mandatory mods. So if you don't like mandatory mods on weapons, that you don't want more mod slots because it would just feel like there were more mandatory mods. You want more good mods. It's the same thing with Warframes and with Warframe powers, where if you want an augment slot, what you actually want is more powerful augments. You don't want more space for them. You also don't want like a Warframe that has one clear power to replace. You want all good powers so that when you replace the thing, it actually feels like a decision. Like if you, what a lot of people are thinking is, well, I can't enjoy replacing a power if there are no bad powers. But there's no difference between having a good power and replacing the bad power with a good power. That's the
Yeah.
same thing. Like just make the
It,
powers good.
yeah. At that
So,
point, a replacement just becomes mandatory, and
yes,
it's just like this thing is missing that thing. So like when it comes to because like I've seen a couple of like people be upset like before the update came out, like they put out some stats, and like they put up some figures as to, like which abilities would be available, which stats they would have, and then like later on they revised it, where like the seemingly most popular like choices, were like nerfed down. How do you feel on that? Like, do you think that like when it comes to like these buff and nerf scenarios, where obviously there's going to be like choices which are going to be like the top 10%, the top choices, like I mean that's going to be in any scenario, like no matter how good you're going to try, like you're always going to have favorite choices, you're always going to have things that the majority of people are going to go for because there are just some things that will generally work with a general playstyle. But like, do you think that like it would like the approach is fine, like which like is there a preferable approach in like either buffing like the rest of the abilities or like nerfing like the top few in balancing, or should that even be done? Like should that even be addressed?
Yeah, we talked about this a lot yesterday on my stream as well. I
Mm-hmm.
was trying to convince people, I did almost the whole stream, where I tried to convince people that the benefit of nerfing a few abilities is that the whole goal of this system is to open people's minds to the idea that they might have fun with abilities they're not currently considering.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you do that? Um, well, you could buff an ability. And let's think about what happens if you buff an ability. So let's say we'll pick real examples. So let's say Baruch's Lull.
Mm-hmm.
Baruch's Lull is good, but it maybe doesn't feel powerful enough when we have other card control like Equinox's Rest. They're different. I don't think this is a perfect example, but just bear with me. Baruch and Equinox have very similar augments for their CC abilities as well. Basically, if you kill a target under the effect, it spreads. But Equinox's Rest is way faster. That's the main thing. So what if they buff Baruch's ability to be way faster or to have some other benefit, right? Maybe when the enemies are asleep, you do more damage to them.
Mm-hmm.
That would be good. What will happen? It sounds good. You buffed an ability, but what will actually happen is that people will focus on that one ability. Let's turn it around and think about what happens if you nerf an ability. So we're going to nerf Rhino's Roar, which they are when it's shared. Rhino's Roar is an ability that just gives you more damage. It just straight up gives you more damage, gives you more of every kind of damage. So yes, that is a pretty broadly applicable ability. So they're making it weaker. What happens? What's the result? Well, it sounds bad. They nerfed an ability. But what actually happens is that people don't focus on that one thing, which implies the possibility that they could focus on many things. So the nerf actually potentially opened up people's possibilities more mentally
Mm-hmm.
because they have to go find something else that they think is powerful, whereas the buff only focused them on that single buffed thing. They're like, well, that was buffed, so I'll focus on that. It's not as simple as that, but I do think that's a good example of how even beside the difficulty of nerfing versus buffing, nerfing is usually easier. It's usually safer as well. There's a benefit to nerfing a few things rather than buffing a few things. And then the other thing is that I personally don't think, this is kind of a hot take, and we're going to find out in like an hour probably if I'm right. I don't think that the nerfs are going to matter that much. Like I think you're going to find that Rhino Roar is like weaker, but like it doesn't really matter. Like you're either not going to have cared anyway, you're going to
Mm-hmm.
end up feeling like some other ability is the best, or if you actually use Rhino Roar anyway, you'll find, oh, well, it went from like 150% damage to like 120% damage, which is still really good.
Mm-hmm.
And the effect will be that a lot of players won't read the patch notes and they'll just think, oh, well, Rhino Roar was nerfed. And whenever anything is nerfed, that means it's not worth using. So I won't use it. Those players are wrong, but the effect is achieved because they have to think about other abilities now. And for the players that desperately wanted to use Rhino Roar, if you really want to use it that badly, like you could check the patch notes and maybe it's actually not that weak. I think that the argument that they might do that is that it doesn't really make a difference either way. You don't really need to make Rhino Roar weaker because the actual game balance is fine. So if you want to give people the idea that it's weaker, simply nerf it nominally, but not significantly, and then make people think that it's weaker without actually making it meaningfully weaker. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if they'll do that because if you look at the nerfs that they've done in the past couple of years, it's kind of a 50-50 split. There's lots that were way bigger than they needed to be, and there's lots that were way smaller than they needed to be. A couple examples of them doing something similar are like the Kuva Brahma is not really meaningfully weaker than it was before, but it is nominally weaker. Like they did technically nerf it. So
Mm-hmm.
everybody thought it was nerfed and they're using it less. And the statistics say they're using it less, but it's not really that much less useful, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Another example is the Catch Moon kit guns, the secondaries, where the damage fall off was reduced, but they're still quite useful. You just need to use them a little bit differently. And yet people use them way less because they were nerfed. So you can kind of get the best of both worlds. You do get people thinking about different weapons, which burns them out less, even though they would never admit that they like that. They would never say, give us nerfs so that we can change things more. Try more different things, but that does happen unless they stop playing the game, which is a risk. That's why you don't nerf things all the time. So I don't know. I know these are arguable. I know people in chat are going to say, I'd argue about the Brahma, I'd argue about Ketchmoon, but they're arguable, fair enough. But just to say that they are arguable, it's not like they just nerfed the thing into the ground. And if they thought it was so overwhelmingly overpowered, like, why wouldn't they? You know, like, the reason is because it doesn't actually need to be that much weaker. It just needs to be perceived as being weaker. They did not both get a substantial nerf. I know we're not going to get into an argument with chat, but if you use weapons, you will find that they are still effective.
I think you raised some very valuable point, especially when it comes to the creativity that boils up when something gets nerfed, because like, I think the very first nerf that I came across was like the Boltar versus Soma, where the Boltar got nerfed and people were like mad at that, and the Soma got nerfed. People were like, "Oh, this is the end of the world," type deal. And like, people can convince you in all sorts of ways that the nerf is the end of the world, but always people will find something. And I think that's definitely a really good argument, which hadn't really occurred to me before, where it's like, if you buff something, like, people just be like, okay, that's better. And like, they'll just think about that one thing. But when like their favorite thing gets nerfed, like, they gotta find other ways, and they're always gonna find other ways. There's always gonna be new best things. But like the creativity that engages is a good thing. I do think on the other end that like nerfs generally tend to feel as like an easy solution, because like, there's basically like two questions that pop up whenever something is desired, like they desire it to be nerfed. Is like, number one, it's like, most of the time the reason that things get nerfed is because they get used a lot, and like the question then is like, okay, well, is it a problem? Because like, if some people are using a thing a lot, like, is that like people make it out as though it is a problem, and like, I can see how, like, if everyone uses one single piece of equipment that people have to sign, is like, yeah, well, it's not really ideal that people don't use all the rest of it. But let's say that like, I just really enjoy like having a kick gun because I really enjoy designing my own thing. Like, you gotta keep in mind that like, everyone's decisions are still individual decisions, so people can make individual decisions based on like complete free will, idiotic ideas. And then like, is it such a bad thing that people will go after like that thing? Like, when it came to the catch one kick gun, I remember when they did that, I was maybe on stream being like, what if we just all keep using it? What if we just all keep using it? Oh, just keep using this catch moon kick gun. And then just like, they're looking at the stats and like, they nerfed it, and like, we're still using it. They're like, oh shit, it needs to be nerfed more. And like, even when it only does like one single point of damage, everyone still uses it. Like, what can they do at that point? Like, nothing can be done at that point. Like, you can't nerf it to like 0 damage. And even then, people will still use it. Like, okay, so like, what do you do? Like, that would be a funny scenario. But like, that's something like, even when it came to Arcwing and like K drives, where with modes of transportation, is like, why is it a problem that like a lot of people use it? Like, yeah, you can argue that's a problem, but you can also argue that's not a problem because it's just a matter of fact. I do think that's like, as a game developer, you can say like, okay, it's a bit of a problem because I want people to like enjoy the variety that I've set up. But I think that point too is like even more important, that like, what causes to occur, and most likely like the fact that this thing had like better stats, like, that's not really the cause of it. Like, there are more underlying reasons as to like, why something gets chosen. It's like, for example, like, why did Arcwing, like the Itzal at that point, get chosen to like across the fast spans of open world? It's like, well, yeah, because it was the fastest. Like, well, that's not really the answer, is it? Because like, the reason why people choose the fastest Arcwing is because, well, a variety of reasons. Like you have to travel very long distances of something which isn't really engaging to walk around in, so you kind of want to do it fast. People use Arcwings because of K instead of K drives because the terrain is different, and like, they use this and that. Like, there are so many reasons where nerf is just such a like one-dimensional, very quick way of like you know, nipping it in the bud, and then just like not really addressing the underlying problem. But then at the same time, like, you don't really have time to address the underlying problem, so the most efficient way is to do the nerf. And then like, when the nerf engages like the creative mind of like the community to be like, oh well, let's go try other things, then like, most likely it is the most optimal solution at that point. But I don't think it's the most optimal solution overall, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. You brought up a lot of good things. I mean, so I think, first of all, we should clarify. I think most people in chat get this, but it might not age well if we don't clarify that. I'm not trying to say that that means nerfs are good necessarily, period. Like, they can have benefits. I think some people don't, like, the common rhetoric I see is that when something gets nerfed, people say they're taking away our fun, there is literally no reason to ever nerf something because it's a power fantasy game. That is not true. That's kind of stupid. There are lots of reasons to nerf things. It's not a perfect solution though. Like it's complicated, you know. And you brought up a lot of reasons why. One bad side of nerfs, of course, is that people don't like them, and it doesn't make people think more about different possibilities to play with if they quit the game because they didn't like the nerf. So obviously that's bad. So you have to be careful there. Obviously, another complicating factor here are creators. Many of these things are only perceived as being as good as they are because creators have oversimplified them. The community nor the developers never did anything like wrong per se in these situations. It's just that the creators were, you know, so lazy is what I'm going to say to save time, but it's not. It's understandable. There's a variety of reasons. No offense if you're a creator who made a video about this. It's more. I get that it's more complicated than that. That may have influenced people to think that way. And then we have to ask, well, why are they encouraged to make content that way? Are we, the developers, encouraging them to make content that way? You know, you don't know. I think so. I think that is true. I think that the game very, very indirectly encourages content to be made that way because the tutorials are so bad. It's so confusing to understand how things work. I saw somebody mention in chat something really important earlier, where sometimes advice is given about a game like Warframe before it's needed. So the player tries applying it, but it doesn't seem necessary. So it's ignored. And then when later it is necessary, it's either forgotten or misconstrued, and the player feels confused. The game needs to do a better job introducing these things at better moments, you know? There's a little pop-up in a mobile game I play that shall remain nameless that always sticks in my mind. You play, it's a turn-based game, and you can enter a node and do a mission. And if you quit out, you lose a resource. It's kind of a minor resource, but you wouldn't just quit out for no reason. So quitting out implies that you, the player, think that you can't win, and it's too hard. So whenever you quit out, the game puts a little pop-up that says, try making your characters stronger using this and this system, and here's how you do that, and then come back and do the thing. Which is small. That could definitely be better. When I was a new player, it wasn't quite enough, but it at least reassured me that the game was saying, like, it's okay that you can't do this. Here's what we would intend you to do. Go try it and then come back. And again, that's not ideal. It could get better, but obviously it's still useful. And I think detecting, you know, if a player is failing missions a lot, like just having a pop-up, you know how when you load into a mission, there's that little tip at the top? Like those could be a lot more targeted and could give players an idea of, you know, maybe if I'm dying now, then when suddenly the enemies aren't taking enough damage, then recommend mods, you know, then expand modding, because then they need it. So I do think that's a thing. And I also noticed there's a lot of things you said that I want to respond to. So another thing is I see somebody in chat saying they don't think the Arcwing thing was that complex. Itzel was faster. There's nothing else you really want from your Arcwing. But that's what Michelle was trying to say. The issue could be viewed as the fact that, like, why didn't you want anything else from your Arcwing?
Yeah.
Or
Well, like I mean, it goes even deeper than that. Like, you could even argue that this is the result of Arcwing being introduced as a game mode, but not really fully implemented because Arcwing wasn't successfully adapted within the game. It always remained this thing that always stuck around. So like you have Arcwing, like it didn't work out as like the game what they intended. So that's why it returned to open worlds and returned with Railjack and returns with every single update. Like they just put it in somewhere, and like because of that, like you ended up with a system where in an open world you had Arcwings because, oh, what can we do with an Arcwing? We can make it a transportation device, and maybe people will like it then. And like, hey, that worked. But then they also had this idea for like open worlds, where like, hey, what if we have K-drives there, like escape, like hoverboards? It's like, okay, well that would really work too. But like if Arcwings weren't there, then like hoverboards would have been like perceived as like the best thing out there. But now, like because we've had the system which wasn't really quite worked out, and then like was put into this thing, now we have Arcwings in there which we have to contend with. So like maybe it started at that level of problem. Like there are many levels on which you could argue that an issue like that starts, and like one of these things could just be stats. It could just very simply be stats. Like you could argue that very well. It's like, okay, it's just a stat problem. It's just like this thing is faster than that thing. But like you could also just argue that like maybe it's because arc rings were like not really fully implemented, or maybe it's because like the open worlds aren't really fully utilized because there are many areas that aren't being explored. Like, why do you have to walk such long distances? Maybe it's because of like the different pacing between the two games modes of the open worlds and like the hallway shooter. Maybe it's the way that people are conditioned, because like if they're conditioned to go longer ways or like longer survivals, maybe they're more conditioned. Like, there are so many different ways in which you could address that like I think just saying that it's a stat problem, like it could be. But it's very like it's very quick to say that, and like I think that like I wouldn't be so quick to say that personally.
Yeah, well, I mean, and what I was getting at is that you could turn it right around and say the problem is that the open worlds were too big and you only went in one place. The biggest thing I've heard other people suggest is, why can't you simply enter the open world from multiple locations? And then there's no need to move so quickly between the locations, you know? It was the Itzels, not the Itzel stats, but Blink, of course. And exactly as you're saying, it was like kind of a thing in the game that was sort of waiting to be the best at something. And then over time, it's like if you develop a game for half a decade with this thing sitting there that is the fastest, but you don't yet care that it's the fastest, eventually it's gonna be the best at something. Like the thing it's the best at will become a thing it's used for, and then it will be a problem, which is why it's important not to balance reactively all the time. It's important to look at a thing and think, and this is what Digital Extremes does, which I think is a problem, where things are balanced as problems arise, rather than thinking, okay, but let's imagine for a second, is everything you could conceivably use the system for? And if you used it for, let's say, this thing, what would be the best at doing that? So like for shareable abilities, it's really simple. We can share lots of different kinds of abilities, and some of them do damage. So people are going to want to share an ability that makes their Warframe do more damage, obviously. So if they want to do that, let's imagine all the abilities we let them pick. Which one will they think is the best? Obviously Roar. So let's not share Roar. Then which one will they think is the best? Eclipse, I guess. So let's not share Eclipse. And you keep doing that, or you can rebalance them too, but just as a simple example, until you get to the point where it's like the player wants damage, what would they pick? And there isn't really a clear thing that they would, like a single ability they would pick. I think that if you removed Roar and Eclipse, that would be the case. In fact, something that we were talking about a lot when we discussed the topic of the Helminth shareable ability balancing that you started this discussion with was why they even allowed Roar and Eclipse to be shared. Just instead of Roar, share Rhino Charge. Instead of Eclipse, share Sleight of Hand. Problem solved. You don't need to do that whole thing about like multiple damage abilities being on the same frame. You could just get rid of that because you got rid of those two abilities. And you don't have to worry about people only using one ability and then nerfing that ability so they'll think about other stuff if you just don't let people use that ability. Like, it's fine. And that wouldn't make people like less excited about the system. There's still lots of good abilities to use. Why did they even let people use Roar and Eclipse in the first place? Like, that just doesn't make sense. And the only reason I can think of is that the balance was being thought of, or they haven't thought about balance in the way we're discussing yet. They're going to think about it when they see usage statistics. And that's a mistake. Instead of doing that, they should think about it before players find out about the stuff and try to preempt. I know it sounds hard or whatever, but I think it's actually surprisingly easy to do. What will players feel like when they see these abilities? What will they want to do with them? And when they try to do X, Y, and Z with them, what ability will they settle on as the ability that seems like the best for that? Many other aspects of the Helminth shareable ability list do address this problem very well. To answer your question from before, if you look at, so for example, damage reduction, there are very few options and they're all very different from each other. So I don't think it's going to feel like there's a clear best one. Crowd control abilities, there are a lot of options and quite a few of them are meaningfully different from each other or have like gravy here and there. Even things simple like people want Nidus's larva as a shareable ability, but there are 3 alternatives. You can use Korra's Ensnare, which has its own benefits. The enemies remain standing up so you can get headshots for one. You can use Zephyr's Airburst, which got changed to be a suck. That is definitely worse in most ways, but Zephyr's a lot easier to get than Nidus or Korra, so that's a benefit. And then you can use mag. Mags is a pull. It doesn't group them together, but it kind of groups them up. And the range is huge. Dude, like, sidetrack for a sec. The range on mag's pull is like 75 meters if you mod it. Where did that come from? Since when? Like, I don't think it's a great ability, but I was comparing them and thinking, whoa. Anyway,
it's probably a remain of like the greedy pull days when like the big thing was just like pull all the resources for all your teammates, and everyone was using that. But yeah, like let's say like in chat they're more talking about let's see how like nerfs are like influenced by creators. You mentioned creators a little bit. I personally have never really felt that like creators have like it's a weird perception. Because like we are engaged in this space, and we got to recognize that like if you engage in a like creator space or like a social media space around a game, you are in a minority. Because like if you look at the amount of players that play the game, like overall majority of them will never like look up like creators of the game or engage in like the forum discussion of the game, or like create like there's barely any franchise that I've ever done that with, and like this one of the few, if not the only one, where I've actually like gone ahead and be like, okay, let's talk about nerfs, let's talk about like things that could be better, could be worse. Most of the time, like people don't engage with that. So, the thing is then like when it comes to like how much do creators like influence public opinion and influence the game, like you would say like they barely influence the entire player base, because like most of the player base doesn't watch them. Then at the same time though, like most of the feedback gets centered to the developers, gets centered from like the active player base, from the people that actually do, from this minority that does actually like engage in this play, and we are also engaged in this, so we cannot really objectively situate ourselves outside of it, so we don't know the way that this plays out outside of it. And at the same time, we don't know whether like developers make decisions based on like the subjective feedback, or whether on raw data. Whether it's like we're just looking at like the 99% of players that don't really engage with this, and we're just looking at the data, or whether they're like very much influenced by what people say. Generally, though, I don't think that like, as far as I've seen, when it comes to like speaking with creators and like how they're like oftentimes like referring to the E, like, oh, they should implement this and they should implement this, I feel like generally most of them are like, oh, they never listen to me, because like they shouldn't. They're just creating videos for crying out loud. It's like, yeah, like I mean, it's great. Like you're investing in a great deal, but like you're not doing game development. You don't know. You don't have all the access to. You don't have access to all the data. So like, why should you be listened to over like anyone else when it comes to like nerfing things in game? Like, do you feel like as is being said in chat, like there is this sensation where some opinions, or like the opinions of creators, are influencing these things in the game?
I think the complicated thing is that there's this saying in business where 80% of your feedback comes from 20% of your audience. And you're right that we don't influence 80% of the audience, but we influence the 20% of the audience that gives 80% of the feedback.
Yeah.
Like, and so we kind of do have 80% of the influence, you know? And that's why I think I was also convinced last year at TennoCon, I met D.E. Sarah. Shout out to D.E. Sarah, who is an intern at Digital Extremes, and her job was to literally watch my videos, you know, not just my videos, and tell the development team, you know, in summary, what we were saying about them. And she introduced herself to me, and she was like, hey, it's nice to meet you. Like, I've watched all your videos, whatever. This is my job. And I was like, huh? And she was like, my job is literally to watch your content. And I was like, I feel really bad. I feel like I assumed that it doesn't really matter, and people would say, you're getting this nerfed, like don't get this nerfed, don't tell people because my fun will be taken away, which is not happening in the first place, but that's how people felt. And I was like, nah, we don't have that much influence. I think we have to say that we do, because like their market research said we should make it someone's job to listen to them, you know? And I've continued to think about that, and think about, you know, what role we have in the community. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that what's complicated is not so much thinking about how much influence we have, but why. Just humor me for a moment. If we think, we players that know about the systems, if we think that the status meta is bad, why not just change it to what would be better. Why not? Like, why not listen to that advice? A lot of people have said some surface level things that I understand about, they want there to be one best thing, but you could change the current status meta and make viral weaker than corrosive against armor and magnetic against shields, but still pretty good, just not better in every situation. And it would still provide a single option that is the best in general. Fact aside that I don't believe most players even know that viral is the best in general, so they're not benefiting from a single best op. That doesn't make sense. But let's just imagine they did. There's no disadvantage. It's better for everyone. People who want a single best option get it, and people who want diversity get it. And for example, I made a long video explaining that. It was too long. I'm sure they didn't have time to watch. I doubt no developer watched that video, I'm sure, which is understandable. I made it too long. But you got to think, like, what? Just humoring me for a moment. I might not have all the answers. My idea might not be perfect, but let's just imagine. Why not implement that idea? And I think that the problem is less with convincing anyone that we have enough influence that if people like our idea, they should do it. I think that is demonstrable in some cases. You could just try it on the test server, and you would see that it was good. Like, I don't think that's hard to argue. I think the real problem is to ask, why are things balanced the way that they are in the first place? Like, why are things balanced this way in the first place? I have a question for you about something. Somebody asked earlier something that I was thinking about a lot, and I wasn't sure what to say. Please one time said, what do you make of the Defy nerf? If there even is going to be one. They said it's going to have a cap, but it always had a cap. I don't think it was good, or that people incorrectly thought it was really good. So you know that some abilities are being balanced separately when they're given by the Helminth system.
Mm-hmm.
So Roar and Eclipse are obvious. Like, of course, everyone's going to want to use them. Now, we already covered, like, why not just not share those abilities if that's a problem? But putting that aside for a moment, they only said they're rebalancing 6 abilities. Roar, Eclipse, Larva, some big ticket items. But then one of them is Defy. Why? Why? And anyway, I have a few thoughts, but I want to know what you think first. Do people think Defy is really good? Like, do people think that ability is really strong? Like, what? Why? Like, it doesn't make sense.
That's an interesting question. Because, like, it hasn't been played with yet. So, like, the thing is that, like, you could say, like, if people think that Defy is really strong, like you could argue that with, like, if this was already out in the game, people were playing it and everyone was playing Defy, then you could say, like, hey, this thing is not even strong, but people are all playing it, so that's the reason why. But people aren't all playing it. Like, I think they've run some tests, but, like, that's not with, like, public perception. Like, that's pretty strange. So, like, either it must be because they saw something, or they've heard people talk about different scenarios in which it could be used. But then it also depends on, like, how they judge, like, how they make certain decisions. So before I get to that, I'd love to, like, know, like, your thoughts on it, because I don't want to, like, take a moment away from this.
They are pretty brief. I mean, so for a moment, we're kind of talking about, like, what does Digital Extremes think the community thinks about Defy?
Mm-hmm.
But for just a second, let's pretend we don't care about that. We obviously do. They should care about that, and they do. But I think they care about it too much, and that's why this is happening. Let's just not think about that for a second. Mm-hmm. Is Defy actually good compared to the other abilities? It is, it turns out. We went through all the abilities on a stream, and I thought about what all of them do. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned earlier how it turns out there are very few purely defensive abilities, like damage reduction abilities. Mm-hmm. Null Star is available, but it's pretty contingent. It scales with duration. You need a lot of duration to make it a lot of damage reduction. And then the particles fly off based on range. So you kind of want negative range, which is also a stipulation. And then to refresh it, you need the augment. So it's not bad. I'm sure there will be some use for it, but it's definitely, you're paying a lot for damage reduction on any frame. Defy gives flat armor. So you can have any frame that doesn't have a good armor value and give them flat armor. Chroma's elemental ward is shareable. And you could set it to cold if we can do that. We probably can, but we're not sure. And then that gives you multiplicative armor. But if you don't have good armor, that's not going to give you a lot. So Defy is the only choice in its dominant in its niche if the specific thing the Warframe needs to become tankier is flat armor. There are other ways to get flat armor, but not very many, basically just arcanes. So if you want your arcanes for something else and your Warframe needs flat armor, the ability you pick is Defy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that that's bad. I think that's a specific enough niche that it's healthy. But indeed, if the player base at large thought of it that way, that may be a minor balancing concern.
Yeah.
What confuses me is that let's assume for a second that logic is now brought back down into the realm of caring about what the players think and reacting to how popular they do the thing, So they're balancing something based on a combination of player perspective and actual objective balance. So why aren't they doing that for other abilities? Like, why is that? So for example, for dispensary, dispensary is having lower duration.
Mm-hmm.
Dispensary is a powerful ability to share. It lets you give energy generation to any frame on an ability with no augment. That's very good. However, making the duration worse is not a big deal. You could cut the duration in half and it would probably still be really good. So what's going on there? Now it sounds like they're only balancing it based on what the players think, not based on how good it actually, or how it's actually good. Same thing with Roar and Eclipse. Like, why even, if you were really worried about the balancing implications, why not just not share those abilities, let alone balance them based on community sentiment? It kind of feels like Defy, it somehow, like, the logic behind balancing Defy differently feels like a little different to me than the other ones. I see somebody in chat saying Defy kind of has been played with. It's basically Arcane Guardian. But most players don't understand that flat armor is valuable wherever it is. Most people don't. That's not a widely understood thing. It's not complicated. People aren't stupid. It's just something that, like, sure, the people that are in the know about the game get, but a lot of players don't understand that. So, maybe it's popularly thought that it will be useful, but I would contest exactly how much of the whole player base thinks that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like,
and I would argue that if it's only the people that have given them feedback, only streamers, the audiences of streamers, that 20% giving 80% of the feedback, does it really matter to balance that? Like, let 20% of the player base think that. Whatever, Like, I just feel like that if you're trying to listen to community sentiment, isn't it not that important if it's only like a small percentage? Anyway,
yeah.
Those are my thoughts since you asked. I don't know what to say. I think it's kind of weird.
Well, I think that you're like you raise a very valid point against like the thing that I brought up. Like, I didn't think that creators had that much influence, based on like the perception of like how small our reach of our player base is compared to like the entire player base, and because of like personal like sentiment that I've felt with like pretty much anyone I've spoken to within like the creator program, or no, the partner program I should say, to be true with semantics. Like no one I've spoken to was like, oh yeah, I have a direct line to DE. Everyone's like, oh no, they never listen to me. So like, but like you refute that very well by saying like, well, like we do like creators do influence like the focal majority of the game. So it's like it's a minority, but they give the majority of the focal feedback. And if they're like, they are very focused on like that focal feedback because like they have someone employed for that, and we see it influence the game. And then like the question that you raised is like, is that in all cases a good thing? And like that's something which I'm also quite concerned about, because like you saying like part of your argument that you said about the like why creators like creator feedback is like creator opinion is of great influence is proven by the fact that they have someone that's watching that. Like that's the reason that goes to show that it's important. Well, I would say yes, it goes to show that it's important in the eyes of Warframe, but is it really important? I don't know. Like, we don't know whether Digital Extremes is making the correct assumption there. Like, they might completely be wrong by employing someone to like go watch YouTube videos, because that might be a complete waste of time. We don't know. I'm not saying that it is, but like it could also very well be. I haven't done the research on that. However, I do think that like, let's say like if you're going to take that as a very important piece, maybe it is a very important. Let's assume that it's something very important. I think that it's handled in a very it's not handled because I don't think that someone is directly influencing it, but it's in a very, very like dangerous, chaotic spot. Because like if it's so valuable, the opinion of creators, which let's face it, are mostly like individual creators, individual people that without like proper like education within their field, like most people are self-taught, self-employed, come into like popularity through creating video content or streaming content, not through like a developing background, playing the game, like their opinions on things on which they don't have the entire data, are influencing the community and influencing the game decisions to an extent which might be a majority of the way that they decide to like go one way or the other. And like if that's not chaotic enough, like these people don't know that their opinion is that important, or at least as far as I've experienced with going around with like interacting with like some of the most important between brackets creators of this Warframe community, like most of them, like they were like, oh, they never listened to me. Like they would never listen to me. Like 90% of the people that like social media goes off about says like, oh yeah, this person directly influences the game. Like I talk to them like, oh yeah, no, they'll never listen to me. It's so annoying. It's like, it's like, yeah, like
well, at the very least, opinion varies wildly among creators.
Yeah, well,
whether
like,
or not opinion is important.
But like the perception that some people have, like this person has a great amount of influence on the game, and then that person saying like, I perceive that I have no influence on the game, like that's problematic, because what you then also get is like if you don't perceive that you have influence on like something so important, you're also going to treat it a little bit more negligent, and like you might leave room for personal emotion, which especially in this climate, especially when it comes to Warframe, because I've experienced it firsthand, like because of the way that they communicate, because of the way that the program is set up, because of the way that like social media is set up, and like the way that we communicate via online, like you're also going to get many different things apart from like this knowledge factor that I was talking about. Like they're not developers, they're not like if you're a popular YouTuber, that doesn't mean that like you also have a great deal of knowledge and you do a great deal of research. Like you can, like that can very well be the case, but it doesn't guarantee it. Like aside from that knowledge thing, you also have the thing where someone might be like, oh, you know, I just really dislike Warframe, or like I just really dislike Warframe because of what they did to me, or just really dislike it because I've been putting all my eggs in this basket for so long, and like I'm really sick and tired of it. But if I do something else, like my channel starts dying, so I'll keep on doing this. I fucking hate it. And that's then starts to influence their opinion, and that then influences the entire community. And based on that, decisions get made. So decisions then don't get made on like what might be based on the stats and based on like well thought out ideas, a good idea, but based on like the personal feelings of what happened to be like an irritated like creator. And it's like, well, if that's the case, like I'm not saying that that is the case, but let's say like you have this environment where the possibility for something like this is so open because of like the way that like this is not communicated through, and the way that like the importance of this thing, like you have the importance of like the influence of creators, and the creators not knowing that they have that influence, and then like the decision being made so seriously based on that. It's like, well, that's like, that makes no sense to me. Like that feels like so chaotic that no one would ever want that.
Yeah, two things. Yeah, so I mean, a big example of that, of another reason why it could be bad for them to listen to the community too much, is kind of a little catch-22 that I find myself caught in a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to listen to me more. Probably not a surprise to most people.
Yeah.
However, let's take the sum total of all people who make Warframe content, all their opinions.
Mm-hmm.
Do I agree with most of their opinions? Do I think most of them have ideas that are good for the game? No. I think no offense, fellow creators, I think almost none of my other fellow creators have ideas that I think would be good for the game. I could easily be wrong, but anyway, within my own limited perspective. Mm-hmm. So do I want Digital Extremes to listen to creators or not? Because if they don't listen to me. And if they do, they also listen to those other people. So it's like, what do we do, you know? And there's no way, from my perspective, I feel that I know that I do have more useful advice than most people do. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it. I've asked a lot of people what they think about my ideas. We've revised them a lot. I've been playing the game for a little while. But then there comes that problem with seniority. people perceive people who've done something for a long time as having better advice, but it's often the opposite. Not only does seniority not necessarily make you better at giving advice, it can often make you actively worse at giving advice because your perspective is completely gone and your sunk cost is too high and you're too emotionally invested. And just as you said, there are a lot of people who influence Warframe in various ways that perhaps unbeknownst to them don't really have a lot to do with the actual game. It's mostly just how they feel, which is fine. Like, they can have those feelings. But should the game's development actually be in like related to that? Like, probably not.
No.
Like, that's probably not a good idea. Which is why my shtick is that the game needs to be a little bit more confident with the value of objective balance. Like, just make things make sense in some way. And then this is the critical step I think they could take. Explain that to the players and then let it go, and have faith that if the game actually has diversity, the players will find it and enjoy it. A lot of things about Warframe already work this way. There are plenty of aspects of the game's balance and development where the game is made in such a way where it's like, we're going to assume that we're going to make something good and put it there and hope you see it and think it's good and hope for the best. And so it's good a lot of the time, especially art. Like, some of the artistic or story decisions in Warframe in general are audacious, and they're put in the game, and we just hope the players like them. Particular one that stands out to me is Nora's new format, where we have these like crime scene investigation things.
Yeah.
I don't know how people feel about that overall, but I know plenty of people like it. And it's pretty out there. Like, that is pretty different from most of the rest of the game. Like, where did that come from? But they just made it and put effort into it, and I like it personally, and hoped that people would see that it was good in some way, or that it was appealing in a certain way. And so some people did. I don't know how well it succeeded, but anyway, some people liked it, and I feel like and so I feel like the big thing is to ask, I don't know how to put this, like, what's the danger in just balancing effectively and then talking to the community about the balance? So, for example, when Pablo talked about the Catchmoon nerfs, he showed the statistics, but he didn't explain, no one explained what the supposed benefit of nerfing the thing would be.
Yeah.
As a developer of this game, trying to make the game more fun for people, isn't it like your worst nightmare and the thing that troubles you the most, keeps you up at night, that people keep saying you're trying to make your fun game that you make for fun less fun? Isn't that what you want people not to think? That would be like the first thing on my mind. If I got one sentence, I would say, I want the game to be fun. You know what I mean? Like, that's the first thing I would say. And they didn't say that. Like, what would it have been so hard to just say, we are changing this so it will be weaker, but not weak, so that you can still enjoy it, but also enjoy other weapons. That's it. Just say that. Like, people won't always understand, but a lot of people would be like, okay, like, I'll at least listen to what you said. And then when the balance comes, they just say again, like, this is weaker, but our intention is that it still be powerful, just not as overbearing. Try it. And if people think it's not strong enough, and our statistics and testing show the same, then we want it to still be good. So we'll change it. And indeed, in that case, their nerf was pretty spot on, and the thing is weaker, but still good. And if the player base had been told that was what they intended to do, maybe they wouldn't have, you know what I mean? It wouldn't have been so easily convincing for people. Some people wouldn't be convinced by just that one time. But if this was something they continued to do, it would form a pattern. I think that the reason that people think that the nerfs are always so bad is because there have been enough that were pretty bad, So that's a thing.
Yeah, well, like,
no, go ahead.
Okay, no, like, I think you hit on a very important thing there, because like first of all, like, can you imagine, like, I mean, like, making a decision and then like explaining that decision by showing like the current situation? It's like, I mean, like, that's basically default thing. Like you wouldn't even like have to add that, because like if you start out with a problem, like you start out with the default situation, you don't have to explain that. But like if you start out with that thing, like you're gonna have to, like, if you're gonna do something, you want to project an idea, you want to get somewhere, and like if you say, like, okay, we're gonna do this because this is the way it is, but we don't know what's going to happen after we do it. We just know that this is the way it is, and we're just going to do this. It's like, okay, so what do you want to achieve? And you don't explain what you want to achieve. Like, that is worst decision making ever, because like you always like you need to have something that you wanted to do, so you can turn around and say like, well, that worked or that did not work.
And it also begs the question, now that you mentioned that, like I see a few players in chat who are really diehard skeptical that their intention was actually to make the game more fun. Now, it has to be. There is no other possible intention. They must have intended it to make the game better in some way, but by not saying what they intended, you're right, there is this other effect where it's like you start to wonder if they had a clear intention in mind, you know, like a vision in mind for it. Because making the thing weaker is in and of itself a way to encourage people to use other stuff. But it would have gone a long way if they'd also buffed some other similar weapons at the same time. That would have driven home the point. It could have even been small buffs. It would have just given people,
well, like I mean,
the impression, you know.
I mean, what you said about like explaining it the next week. Like, let's say they come around and say like, okay, so like these are the stats right now. It's problematic that like this weapon is like the most used weapon right now because we have a wide variety of weapons and want everyone to be free to choose, and like this implies that like this thing is better than everything else, and like that takes away the choice of people, which because people want to keep up, and we think that's a problem in our game. And in order to make it more fun so that people can have a wider selection, we want to change that. So like these are the stats that we have, and we want to move. Like, we want to change this so that other weapons are encouraged, and then this is a protected change that we see. And like 2 weeks or a month later, it's like, okay, so we implement this nerf. Like, these are the stats. These were the stats before. These were our protected stats. This is what changed. Okay, maybe it was a little bit too harsh. Maybe it wasn't like how did it reach our intended goal? And like, of course, they don't have to share that on a dev stream. However, because like we're not like their board of developers, we're just a community. It's like it's up to their discretion what they share or not. However, I do like the sentiment that you described, where it comes around, where it's like the first thing that people react with is like they did it to make the game less fun. It's like I can very well understand that, because like over the last few years, like I think it around the Plains of Eidolon, even though that was like a great moment, I think that was also a turning point in like the way that Warframe development was being felt, and I personally felt that as well, where it was like before, like every single thing was like a push forward, like the second dream was a push forward for the game, and like we were pushing the game forward from like its position that it had, and we're making it better. But then it was like, oh wait, the Plains of Eidolon doesn't push forward, but it's for the new players, because always at the start, like all the veteran players or the old players felt that was for the new players, and all the new players felt it was for the veteran players because there were Eidolons and they didn't get it, and there was no introduction. And then Fortuna came around, and all the veteran players felt the game was being made for the new players, and all the new players thought it was being made for the veteran players, and everyone felt like they were being left out. And I think that a lot of that comes from like what you described earlier, with like the way that they develop based on community feedback, which is like very responsive on like the things that are being said, but like they don't lay out like a well thought out framework. So it's like, well, you can like very quickly jump on something. Like let's say for example Railjack. Like Railjack didn't quite work out. It's like, why was that released at the time that it did? What was the intention of it? I don't know what the intention was with Railjack. From like the moment that it was announced until it was released, even right now, I don't know what their intention of it was, because there have been so many conflicting statements, and the way that it sits right now is such a weird thing, and it's gonna come back to like bite it in the ass, because at some point like either it's just gonna sit there as an abandoned system, and like people are gonna like hate that it's all abandoned, or people are just gonna be like, or it's gonna be like shoved in with Arcwing, and at some point there's gonna be a moment where like the Railjack is gonna be better than like the K drive system that they introduced, so then like they have to nerf this and that again. And it's like, well, like if you're more clear with like what your intentions are, and like you lay out your framework, and you have a clear idea in mind of what you want it to be, and you go out and like do the thing that you want it to do, and then you do it as best as you can, and then move on to the next thing, like it's gonna be better, like because like you're just gonna execute your idea. But I think it's also partly because of like the landscape that they operate in, where like you gain relevancy with your game, which is really important. The momentum for with a free-to-play game is really important. You gain that only by like announcing new things and jumping on the new thing. It's like if they were to continue to work on this failed project called Arcwing or no Railjack, or like failed or not failed, or like not very popular thing, then like their momentum would decrease. And like, would that mean the end of the company? Would that mean like would you ever get that back? And like, I think that that's a really tough thing to operate in. And like operating on like community guideline feedback, I wonder if that's like the best way of going about it. But then again, they've operated like that for 7 years, so here we go. They have succeeded in some way, for at least up until this point, and continuing further.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you said about the forward progress, though. I mean, I feel like a big thing that I hear people discuss that really frustrates me in some ways, but which I understand, is the suggestion that the game is being developed the way that it is for money. So, for example, one reason that people say, "Oh, well, the reason Status Revised was so bad was intentional." They intentionally, and this doesn't make sense, but just follow me for a second. They intentionally made only one thing the best new thing, so people would reformat their weapons, buy new weapons, care about new weapons, and it just creates a lot of grind and turnover for people to new stuff, which makes them money. It's not better for the game in any way. The game is not more fun with that meta, but it might make them more money. And this is why that does not make sense, because when you have an update like that that has a bad lifespan, and Digital Extremes cares about the lifespan of their game, they clearly do, you create a situation where it's not a good news update, really. No. It's the game being revised, which doesn't sound as good as making some new thing. If they are going to divert time from making some new thing, you really want the economy of that time to be as good as possible. In other words, you really want that update to get it right the first time, above all else. Other updates, like new content updates, it's not as important for the thing to be right on the first time. It's comparatively okay, as crazy as it might sound, for like Heart of Deimos balance to not be quite perfect. But for those balance updates, you're eventually gonna have to do something about the balance. So making it right the first time, caring about that the first time, matters a lot. And balancing in a way that is profitable then aligns with balancing in a way that is fun and creates game diversity. So I do think that there's a conflict there where it can possibly be that the way that they are doing it is just suboptimal. It's not like there's not like a reason, and we disagree with the reason. It could be that they may just be mistaken about balancing it that way, or they might be confused. They might feel like, well, the community backlash for the transition would feel really weird, No. Fair enough, but I feel like at this point it's demonstrably kind of worth it. There is some worthwhile. Something I wanted to leave you with, as I need to take a quick absence, is so you may have seen on the main Warframe channel, they did a couple of videos, sponsored videos from really popular content creators and streamers that weren't otherwise related to Warframe, at least as far as I know. Certainly people I've never heard of before, but I gather that they're very popular. Why? It's related to this idea of like, we've been talking a lot about how like what people think a lot influences how the game is. But this is kind of the reverse. It's them saying like, we want, or we think it is valuable to show you the face of someone who influences a lot of people. So why? Like, because why? Like, for what purpose? Makes sense? I hope that makes sense, and I will be right back.
Yeah. So I believe that like it's generally like the other way around. Like the goal is not necessarily for them to like show you the phase of like, I know PewDiePie wasn't in this, but let's say PewDiePie, for example, or Ninja or whatever, like we can name whatever phase. I think that the appeal is more to have Warframe, or like, in this case, the property should be shown off to the audience that creator has. Because I think that that's one of the things where, like this entire idea where Warframe, this Warframe partner program which recently dissolved. One thing which I think was a massive flaw with it was the big requirement on it where Warframe creators had to solely create Warframe content or like mainly do it, and if you didn't do it like 4 or 5 times a week, people would be but like upset about it or things like that was the expectation. And I don't think that's a healthy thing because unless they're willing to like employ creators like they're actually employees or engage in a relationship where it's like, okay, so like whatever you do, like our businesses are tied and like you care about our success, like most Warframe creators care about the success of Warframe, but at the same time, like we as Warframe also care about your success as a creator because we have this dependent structure on each other. As long as that's not like formalized, at that point, it's like it's more beneficial for the creator and Warframe to be strong separate entities. So they need to be able to strongly stand apart from each other. Well, that's also like it's a bit different because you cannot expect like PewDiePie to like go in and like do a detailed analysis of the situation like Xandy does, for example. However, I do think that it is like it depends on like what your goal is, and like I never assumed that Warframe would have or like it would have such inherent value added towards the opinions of their creators, because I'd hope that they would go and like base their decision based on stats and the expertise of the team who like were trained for this, and then like a bit of like community feedback on top of that. But like if they have like a big goal of like getting opinions from creators to like influence their decision making, then like that's one goal, and then the other goal would be to like attract new viewers, attract new people towards their property, and that would be done not by the Warframe creators, like because if they only create Warframe content, there is no audience there that hasn't played Warframe yet. But if they have an audience which has never seen Warframe, then you have a different goal. But let's see what you guys think. Let's see. Let's see. Blue Demon says it's a out of touch trying to get the myth of the wider audience. Let's see. I don't see many responses to this, but like, let me know if you guys feel about it. Let's see. Not that I'm aware of, but I bet it'd be. Not that I'm aware of, I bet it'd be industry revolutionary for any free-to-play game to be so open about where their income comes from. That said, not for the first time, open drop tables is rather adjacent. Let me see. I think there are many different discussions in chat right now. So, if anyone wants to like comment on what Xandy left us off with, feel free to put your things down. Oh god, I had something which I wanted to bring up, and I lost it. Damn it. Oh man. What was it? There was something I had. It's like a really, really interesting question which came up with let's see, the catch moon nerfs didn't matter because all you had to do was slap on the Exilus mod and everything was reversed. I mean, generally, like, nerfs can be reversed quite easily. And, like, it's more the perceived way of, how people, see a weapon. Because, like, basically, like, if your only problem is, like, the usage level, like, you don't need to treat the problem. You don't need to treat the problem that caused, like the weapon to be more powerful. You just need to, treat the perception of how powerful the weapon is. It's like you don't even need to nerf it. As long as you can make people perceive it in such a way that it seems to be nerfed, then people will use it less, and like your problem of it being used so much is instantly solved. So, okay. So yeah, there is a red text line, so I think the update is coming imminent.
I have got something to say about that, Michelle.
Go ahead.
I think what's complicated is that sometimes I agree that it's kind of the same as making something be perceived as being nerfed is kind of the same as actually nerfing something. Mm-hmm. But sometimes that's the problem. I see people saying in chat that they kind of like address the statistic, but they didn't address the underlying problem. But sometimes, I mean, it differs what the underlying problem is. Sometimes the underlying problem is simply that the thing is used a lot. Because players are influenced by the creators, it's possible that people could just overblow a weapon and then people use it a lot despite there not really being like a particular reason to do so, and then making it a tiny bit weaker, an amount that doesn't really matter, but just a tiny bit weaker, will shift player perception away from using it while not affecting the game's balance in any meaningful way.
Mm-hmm.
And that can solve the problem. If the problem is that the players have been wrongly fixated on one thing, and they just need to be encouraged not to fixate on that one thing. Now, I would argue very briefly that point I made before. Couldn't our developers simply say, did you know that this weapon is not actually that much better than these other weapons? Look at these other weapons and then do the thing. Tens of thousands of people watch dev streams. I feel like that would probably do something. But anyway, whatever, putting that aside for a moment. I'm not saying it's necessary to nerf things to accomplish that, but that is what it does sometimes. However, there's also a different problem where something is nerfed to make people use it less, but the underlying problem isn't people simply fixating on it for no particular reason. The underlying problem is, for example, the thing actually restricts design or balance. Mm-hmm. If there's a weapon that does more damage than other weapons, and it hits in a bigger area than other weapons, I wonder what weapon that would be, then you need to change it because it prevents other weapons from being like actually useful, well, whatever players think. Mm-hmm. And so then if you make content where it matters, like which weapon you're using, it will only ever be that weapon. And so those you need to, there's a kind of a different reason you want to rebalance them. And you could also fix the situation in some cases by changing the context. So going back to the Itzel changes, to the blink, the reason that was a problem can be chalked up to a lot of things. The way Arcwing was put in the game was one you mentioned. One I mentioned was because it takes a long time to traverse the open worlds. Mm-hmm. If you simply make it so it does not take a long time to traverse the open worlds, then that's another way to solve the problem that Itzel represented without nerfing it. Like you don't mm-hmm. have to change it. Now, in that case, I think it's pretty demonstrable that that problem was going to come up elsewhere. Like the Itzel mobility problem would also have been an issue in Railjack content, for example. Mm-hmm. So that would have restricted the game in other places. But it's an example of how sometimes you can solve like the core issue, but other times the core issue is that the thing is falsely perceived as being so much better. And just nerfing it a little bit literally does address the core issue sometimes. Mm-hmm. Not all times, but sometimes. I feel like when we talk about this, it's easy to think a little bit too much about why, like the one reason why they're doing the thing. And it's like, well, there maybe for them, there's only one reason, who knows, but there are many reasons you might want to do such a thing. I just think it's worth, mm-hmm. I just think it's worth mentioning. I wanted to quickly address something that I was really surprised didn't come up until just now. But somebody in chat says, there's another side of that argument though. Why make something worse when you can make others better? So here, there are a few reasons, and I wanted to quickly mention them since we talked about nerfs so much. First of all, it can be easier to nerf than to buff. It can take development time to buff something that's really bad. Let's take an example. Loki's decoy is a really bad ability most of the time. And to buff it, you can't simply make the numbers on it higher. You need to make it do something it doesn't currently do, because it doesn't currently do anything that we care about doing. So to make it powerful, we're going to have to literally change it. They're going to have to program in some new effects. You can argue about specific abilities, but you get what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. This is not always true of buffs. There are abilities, Inaros' abilities come to mind, that you could simply change the numbers and they could become powerful. But a lot of abilities are bad because they don't do something relevant, not because they don't do enough of something relevant. That is harder to do than simply making an ability that does too much of something relevant do less of something relevant. The second reason is the thing I mentioned before, which was that when you nerf one thing, theoretically, you get more economy of creativity versus buffing one thing. People focus on the one buffed thing. You nerf one thing, as long as people don't quit the game, they now focus on potentially more things. There's theoretically more variety. So that's one reason. And then a third reason is that people complain about the game being too hard right now. I mean, too easy right now, excuse me. And so if you want the game to be more challenging, why are we making things more powerful? Ultimately, buffing and nerfing things has the same goal in a vacuum, which is to make things feel meaningfully balanced.
Mhm.
So whichever one gets the job done in a way that is more decisive and effective and economical for the development time and such, is ideal in a vacuum. It's just obviously players don't like nerfs, you know.
Yeah.
I do agree strongly with something that Chad has kind of suggested, which is that if you're going to nerf something, why not also buff things? Like, why not nerf multiple things and buff multiple things?
Mhm.
Clustering balance changes together does seem like a good compromise, where instead of having only one nerf, and then maybe there's an argument that that's in some ways better than one buff, but why not just do multiple nerfs and multiple buffs and just put them all together? And they do sometimes do that. So I don't know. Yeah. So I mean, somebody mentions like if you make everything better, you end up with everything being balanced again. Same thing you could do with one nerf or however many. Except the game is now easier, which we don't want. So, so that I don't know. I mean, you could argue that. But.
Yeah. So I really quickly do just want to check on you. Like, the idea that we have with the FrameCast today, if you're watching this live, is that the update is pretty much going live in like a minute or so. The update is going to be coming out. So like, you guys will be, if you're playing Warframe and if you want to like get the update, it will probably take a while for that thing to download. But then Xandy's going to go live and play the update on Twitch. And we're going to be sending you guys through to that. So I just want to know from you, like, what is your time approximation for you that you want to go live? So that like we have an idea for like how long we can still go. Like I'm fine with anything.
You can probably see in my resolution, or maybe not. The update is deployed and downloadable, and I am downloading it on PC. Mm-hmm. We might as well wait until it's downloaded. Is my quality still bearable?
Yeah, your quality is totally fine, perfectly. So there's no problem with that.
I mean, it's downloading pretty slowly. So
yeah, okay. Well, well then, let's there's one thing which I really want to touch on, and then after we touch on that, and if there's still time, we can still get back to like the creative thing, like the topic you left us, which we didn't come back to. But like one thing that I really want to touch on, because that's something that just came up, because like the thing that you said where people like the reaction that people give is like, why is making the game less fun, or like even with like the nerfs and the buffs, is like, why is the problem that like they nerf something, and like why do people get upset that it's not being buffed? And like I guess it's because like this, like the way that you perceive it as like the fact that you perceive it like, oh, they're just nerfing it and they're making it less fun, like that's a problematic thing, which is probably more problematic than like even I think, or like many people think, because like let's say that like you're in favor of something, like you like something, like, which I think like if you're a fan of the game or you played it for a long time, or like you're watching content about the game, like you probably like it, and anything that you like, you want the best thing for. And like we all know that like the best thing for something is not always a good thing. Like it will oftentimes also be a bad thing. It will also be something like, hey, you know, you got to restrict this, or you got to like take this down, or you got to like turn this down, you got to like you will never want. Let's say, for example, you have a pet, for example, that you really deeply care about. You would never want it to like always do whatever it wants. You also want it to be like civilized and behave, because then like, you know, it will live for a long time. You don't want it to eat properly, because then it will be around with you. And if it's in pain because like it got some sort of wound, you want to like clean that, and like it will shy away from that wound when you clean it, because that hurts. But you want to do that, so you want to go through with like with that bit of pain, because you know it's for the ultimate benefit of it. So like I don't think that like as long as people perceive that like whatever steps the developers are taking is to make the game better, like nerfs aren't necessarily the problem, because like if nerfs are there to like make your game that you care about more fun, then like that would not be a problem. And I think that like one of the things is that like I think that it's been like quite some time since I thought that like the intent, or the way that I perceived their intent was to like make things better. So like have you felt like have you at all felt like at some points where decisions were made that these decisions didn't seem to be made like from an intent of like they're making the game better, or like I had it better in my head to like post this, but it's kind of like
but I understand,
like and also want to post this to chat, like do you currently feel that what they are doing, what the developer of Warframe DE is doing, is making the game better? Like, how do you feel? It doesn't mean like how it like how you reason it. It's just like, do you feel that like with most of what they do recently, or like for the longest time or whatever, like do you feel that they're doing it to like ate the game, in your opinion, or do you think that they're doing it to make the game less fun? If there has been a perceivable difference over time, so let's say it changed like Red Place Eidolon or Railjack or whatever, like when was that? And why was that? Because I think that that's a very important thing to know. Because I think that before the second dream, it was like everything that happened was kind of like to make the game better. And I feel like after that, like this discussion of like they're making the game less fun has become so much more prevalent, where it feels like people don't think DE and them are on the same line in trying to make the game better. I think that's more problematic than we might think. So, yeah.
I just want to very quickly clarify, because there was a little confusion where there are definitely two separate things where, like, do you think that D intends to make the game better? And separate thing, do you think they are making the game better?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I have a pretty clear answer about that. I think you worded it really well. I wasn't confused. I think it was Plains of Eidolon Twitch drops when we switched from things making the game better to things being intended to grow the game, or I guess if you want to be cynical, you could say like for financial reasons or whatever. But I think was to make the game more popular, not to make the game like higher quality or more fun. And they tried that for Fortuna and Railjack and Empyrean, and they realized that it doesn't work and it feels terrible, and they're cashing checks they can't redeem. And they said these things pretty much. They didn't say that it was because the game wasn't like being made better directly, but Steve did mention to us he feels like that was the time. It was basically Fortuna and then Empyrean. Those 2 years, that was when the game switched from like really building momentum and doing all these great things to cashing checks that they couldn't fulfill. And then this year, I think they switched back right after Scarlet Spear. So I would say like Plains of Eidolon Twitch drops campaign ending up until, so that was like 3 years ago, and then a little less than 3 years ago, and then as of like probably 6 months ago, it stopped, and that's how I feel. And I feel like Deadlock Protocol was like the first meaningful update that was not doing that, that reversed the direction, and I think now we're well and properly there. We're about to find out too, because the update's downloaded. But no, I think that's a really good question. I do think that the quick distinction to make is that, again, I agree with our somebody in chat saying I think their heart is in the right place. I think that they were, it's not like they were trying to make the game bad, you know what I mean? It just didn't solve a lot of the problems.
Yeah.
And so that's you know,
I think that you put that very appropriately, because like I very much agree with that timeline. Even if I hadn't thought of that, like I wasn't really like thinking in my head about like the Twitch drops period till like Deadlock Protocol, but that's actually precisely the thing for me, because like the Twitch drops time, like that was like that started it. And from that point on until like Deadlock Protocol, like for me, what signified it a lot was like, I think in January, I might be wrong, but like somewhere in 2018, like we had at a very, very short interval, we had announcements in the dev stream of like the sacrifice of Fortuna, of a dark sector system or something, because raids were taken out, and the Kingpin system, like all in like consecutive dev streams, where it's like, okay, so you're announcing this, but these are all like year-long projects. Like, how are we supposed to believe that any of these are going to work, and you're going to have Telecom reveals and the sacrifice isn't out yet? And at that point, like it becomes so not believable that like the Deadlock Protocol surprised me, because for me personally, it felt like over time these premises seem to become less real, and like I lost faith in that, like the steps that were taken to make things better and push things forward. So that like I was actually shocked when like the Deadlock Protocol came around. I was like, this actually is good. This feels good. So I'm really curious right now with the update that's live right now, like how this will feel. But like also like the way that this was announced, well, I was shocked that it actually felt good, because my initial idea was like, this is going to be bad. And I think that you hit the timeline perfectly on the head. So I'm curious as to like what how everyone else feels, like whether people all share that sentiment, whether people share a different sentiment, especially if they joined like in between like that time period, because a lot of people also joined after the PlayStation 5 line came out. So like, are they gonna notice a difference? Like, have they felt like a different way? I'm really curious. Like, it's an interesting way of looking at it. But like, you have the game running, I believe.
I do. We did Deadlock Protocol. I mean, damn it, Heart of Deimos is installed, and I have it open on my screen, and I typed in my password, and we can play the thing. The challenge is always like, as soon as I log in, everyone in chat will systematically ask, like 10 different people will line up and ask for like the 10 different things about the update, and it's like, what do we do? I don't know which one to do.
well, just what rushes through your head right now? What do you feel? What kind of feelings does the update give you right now? You see it, your instant reaction?
I'm excited. I want to play it and see. Honestly, I want to read the patch notes because I'm very curious what a lot of the things, like the technicalities we were worried about. I'm very curious what the results will be. How much did they change the balance of those Helminth abilities? And I don't care about that because I'm worried about it. I care about it because I want to go into streaming the content knowing what other people might be feeling about it. And then I can see, like, when I play it, do I really think that's a problem? You know what I mean? Like, does it really feel that way? Because a lot of these things feel like really minor. You know what I mean? It's like at the end of the day, we can explore this world, and like my whole career is about like buildcrafty stuff. But that's not the only thing that matters, you know? Like I'm excited to just go into the world. Like, what does the environment in the open world on Deimos look like? What does it look like? What are the new set mods? Just what are they? Like, what do they do? There's one that's like, I read on the hub site, there's one that's like you stack up combo counter points and then you do a slam and it creates like tentacles that erupt from the ground based on your combo counter. That sounds awesome. Like, how fast can we acquire that? Like, so yeah, I don't know. It's exciting. There's 4 new weapons.
Ooh, and like, yeah, you're gonna get to try them out straight away. I'm gonna have to work for them again. God dang it, that's been a while. But yeah, man, like, I believe that you do want to get into it real quickly. So let's not make this for too long. I want to say, like, I really enjoyed the FrameCast like this with you. There have been a lot of topics that like I really enjoyed talking about. Like, it's been a long time since I've seriously like enjoyed talking this much, like, just about Warframe. Like, it's been a long time since we've done just a Warframe FrameCast. So like, thank you. There are still so many topics which I've been dying to still discuss. One of which is including like the extra layer of complexity that like this Helminth system right now, like taking out abilities onto Warframes, like adds onto like the already complex Warframe system. Like, or like, at what point is this complexity like too much? But yeah, also like the recent discussions when it came to like the Mastery 8 requirement as to like when this system unlocks and stuff like that. Like, they're very interesting topics to all talk about. Yesterday you were also talking about the creator program very briefly in your stream. That would also be a cool thing to discuss. So, like, if you ever want to join us again with Casino, you're always welcome. I hope you enjoyed and you had a fun time.
Thanks for having me. No, absolutely. I would be down to like wait a couple of weeks and then be like, Helminth system is the thing now. What do we think?
So yeah, so that we can get over. Oh, by the way, make sure that you like copy paste on your like already copy like /unstuck, so you can immediately like paste that whenever the game crashes. You're probably gonna have to do it a couple times today.
Yup.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. I recommend that you get your stream started, and I can like shut up and then like send everyone over to you once your stream is going, unless your stream is going already. I should probably open your page.
We'll launch and we can get started.
But yeah, if you guys want to check out Xandy, go over to, I think, YouTube.com Xandy Pants, Twitch.tv/Xandy Pants, and the other places.
No, Twitch.tv/Xandy Pants is good. Fire away, everyone. Let us explore the open world, the name of which I always forget. To glory.
Wait, but what's the name?
What? I always forget the name of this open world. The Okay, hold on. I'm gonna pull up the patch notes because that's what we need to do anyway. What is this open world called? Heart of Deimos update 29. It's called the Cambion Drift.
Okay.
Yes.
It's I didn't even know. But like I mean like I'm still calling like Fortuna. I I still call that the Plains of Fortuna. You have the Plains of Eidolon, the Plains of Fortuna. I think it's got a different name, but I don't know.
Yeah. But no, understandable. I forget. A lot of the time I say Cetus and I mean Plains of Eidolon. Like
Yeah.
that's one I get stuck on a lot.
Yeah.
It'll take some time to get used to.
Yeah, I had it for like the first 5 years playing Warframe. I always used to call it Destiny 2, and then like I got into some heavy problems with that.
Or just like before Destiny 2 launched, we just called the plain Valis, Destiny 2, Warframe 2.
Yeah. I was like, dude, like I really love Destiny 2, and like, yeah, dude, me too. Fuck Warframe. It's like, what? What are you talking about?
Oh. Whoops.
So like, yeah, Excalibur is my favorite, and Destiny 2.
Yeah. Maybe we'll make the best Warframe Zaku episode during this one. It'll have to wait a while to go up because they're in alphabetical order, but we could at least discuss.
Yeah. Anyway, that's it for this week's FrameCast 52. Next week we'll be back with Xeno, who is now taking a holiday. And yeah, say hi to Xandy right now because we're going to send the stream right over to Xandy right now if you're watching this live. If you're not watching this live, if you're not watching this live, then go watch his VOD or like watch his videos that he's going to make on it. By the way, playthrough is coming like first day Friday on this channel, by the way. That's going to take a little while, but this is live right now. So enjoy.